I'm having some technical difficulties these days. Today, I downloaded a program that I highly recommend you not download. It's called Sea Cleaner, and the purpose of it is to clean up your computer and take care of files and stuff that keeps it from running correctly, and which it might do. I use Windows 10, and I don't know that the this newest hot version that they sold me is compatible. And here's why I say that: because I downloaded it and my camera went away on my Surface Pro 7, which is that's my computer, and I do all my really all my stuff on it. It's very, uh, I've tried, I guess I've spent about 5 hours now trying to figure out how do I get my camera back. And guess what? I don't know. I've tried everything. I mean, I've looked at everything I know to look at in Windows. I've tried to set to create a restore point. I, things aren't working, and it's very frustrating. So anyway, just thought I'd share my frustration. I'm having to use my tablet here, and that's going to make a difference in the way things look, and it's going to make a difference in how I can do stuff. All right, so whatever. I guess what that means is um, pray for patience for me. I really hate that prayer. Because when I ask God to grant me patience, he's so crafty. Then he brings stuff into my life that I have to be patient about. Uh, Funny how this actually kind of connects with where we are in First Timothy chapter 4. Yesterday, last time, I talked about what Paul wrote to Timothy. Yeah, here it is. Whoops. And this is another aspect. I've got to do this reading my scriptures off my phone in a unique way to me. So, anyway, okay. He says in verse 7, have nothing to do with godless myths and old wives' tales. Rather, train yourself to be godly. And I talked about the process of training yourself, really, in all ways, is not very fun. Training is, I like, the only athletic pursuit I have is golf. And I do enjoy going to the driving range and hitting balls and being on the putting green and the chipping course and all that. I like that. But see, that's not really training. That's just getting out and banging balls. I'll go back to what I said last time. It's not just practice that equals training. It is intentional practice. It is working on a specific thing that will make the overall outcome what I want it to be, or will get me to it. And here's the other thing: performance psychologists are they're essentially united in the concept that it takes, to achieve excellence in any particular field, this intentional practice takes 10,000 hours. Oh, please, Lord, don't make my patience thing take 10,000 hours of intentional practice. I'm worn out just thinking about it. But when Paul writes to Timothy, train yourself to be godly, I get, and I don't want to make this too goofy, but for me, I feel like the Holy Spirit is saying, Steve, Train yourself to be godly. You've got an opportunity here. So, what does it look like? Two things. Number one, what does it look like to have been trained in godliness? And number two, what does this training look like? Well, let's move forward and see if Paul doesn't give us a little clue on that. He says in verse 8, for physical training is of some value. In other words, physical training is not bad. Your fitness. I'm at the age where if I want to continue my ministries, I'm going to have to give much greater attention to my physical health. Because you can't just do the things that ministry requires without having some physical resources to draw on for that. I know God can do anything. He can. But the pattern I've observed in my life and looking around is He gives us it truly is an honor and responsibility to give appropriate care to our health and physical being. And so Paul says, yeah, physical training is of some value. Don't sit around and get all, blubbery and out of shape and where you can't get up and move. Don't do that. And I'm talking to myself now. But godliness, he says, has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. All right, now, he hasn't really described, he hasn't given a good thorough picture of what does godliness look like and how do we get there? What does this training process consist of? And I don't think he will. But he has offered what could be significant motivation to stay in the process. Now, one of the reasons I think that Paul doesn't get more specific about what does this process look like is because generally it will look the same for everybody, but the more specific you become, the more personalized God's approach is on our, training to be godly. You and I are very similar in very many ways, yet we're different as well. And God knows this, has accounted for it. So my training for godliness goes, I think, and I've already told you, I wish I was a performance psychologist. Then I could say with some academic credibility, this is what I think. But I don't have that academic credibility, and I don't foresee at my age going back to school for 4 years to become a performance psychologist. So, but I'll give you my opinion, which, my opinion, I like my opinions. All right, here's my opinion. This training for godliness looks in two directions. It looks at my strengths and my gifting, and it makes effort to refine these things so that I can make even better use of them, more effective use of them in life and in ministry. Here's the other part. It looks at my weaknesses. When I was younger, I had a friend who was working at a huge church, and when we got back together, he was full of ideas. And this guy he leaked passion about anything. Everything he was into, he had a passion for, which when you're young, that's more likely to happen. But anyway, he said, here's what I've learned. Go with your strengths. Bag your weaknesses. Go with your strengths. Well, it sounds really good. Here's the problem. You're not going to always be able to bag your weaknesses. In other words, you can't always ignore your weaknesses and just do what you're good at. Not in normal life. Now, by the way, our cat is singing the song of her forebears. Anyway, here's what I've discovered. You build your strengths while standing on, I got it backwards. My cat meowing got my mind off, and I'm awfully easily sidetracked. But here's how it goes. I think you work on your weaknesses from your strengths. You utilize your strengths to work on your weaknesses. Now, I know this is true in my counseling work, okay? Virtually everybody I've counseled, the only reason they come to me is because their weaknesses are getting in their way. And additionally, everybody who comes to me for counseling has some strength. There are some things they're getting right. Now, a lot of them, when they come, they feel like they're not doing anything right. They feel defeated and deflated and unvaluable. And part of my job is to help them discover God's design and live that as the design for their life. And one of the things that I think includes is discover your strengths, work as though they were a footing or a foundation or a firm level place to stand, to work on your weaknesses. This is what training yourself for godliness is about. So first, the two things that I think we have to do if we're going to train ourselves to begin with is, one is, and maybe I think the first thing is, discover your strengths. What gifts has God given you? Now, when I say what gifts, Christians immediately, especially church Christians, will go to, oh yeah, spiritual gifts. I need to go take that test. Well, if you want to do that, that'd be fine. I often think, it's interesting. Paul didn't have Timothy take a gifts inventory test. None of the church fathers took a gift inventory test. They weren't even available until the 70s. So sometimes I think we put a lot of value in things that are still not that valuable. Okay, but your spiritual gifts matter. The other side is some things that you might not consider a spiritual gift and may not be a spiritual gift, but they are strengths that you possess. Strengths of your character, strengths of your personality style. And then identify these and then reflect on, where are my weaknesses? Because my weaknesses hold me back. My strengths will move me forward, but my weaknesses will always hold me back. So where are your weaknesses? If you got guts, ask the one or two people who are closest to you. If you're married, it takes a lot of nerve, but ask your spouse, where are my weaknesses? Ask your best friend. If you have an accountability partner, ask them, where do you see my weaknesses? They can be helpful, but ultimately it needs a prayer. God, I'm asking for your grace to help me see my weaknesses. And I'm going to pick up next time with All right, once you do that, what do you do next? And I'll see you then on So Care with Stevie Boy.